Hey, it's Meltdown. So excited to give you this interview with guitarist Troy Van Leeuwen from Queens of the Stone Age. He's out on tour right now with Jane's Addiction in place of Dave Navarro, who's out on long COVID. They're touring with Smashing Pumpkins. I saw the show the other night right here in Detroit, and let me tell you something. Both bands sounded amazing, and Troy friggin' ripped on the guitar. This is so cool. We met up at a location in downtown Detroit, which we'll get into here in just a couple of minutes. There's really some hidden gems in the city, and this is definitely one of them. Now, let's get to the interview with Troy. Hey, it's Meltdown here at the beautiful Echopark with Troy Van Leeuwen from, well, I was going to say Queens of the Stone Age, but there's like a long laundry list of bands that you've played with over the years. How you doing, Troy?
Good, how are you?
Good. Yeah. In town tonight with Jane's Addiction, and I think that's where I want to start. It's funny because I was going to tell you, I usually have this whole long list of notes, but I was looking through your bio, and there's so many things to talk about with you. We'll start with Jane's.
We'll start with Jane's. Okay.
First of all, you're playing with Jane's tonight with Smashing Pumpkins, and so tell me about that call that you get that Dave can't go on tour.
Well, I was very surprised because, first of all, to me, I've seen Jane's Addiction, countless times, especially when I was younger, when some of these, records first came out in the late 80s. I mean, he was such a fixture in the band, and I was just like, how are you going to do that, I was like, first of all, flattered, to get that call to say, like, well, we think you should do it. Luckily, I knew most of the music, so I just kind of, I discovered that, when you're in your teenage years and you listen to records, those records seem to stick with you for forever. So luckily, I knew those records, and so I just kind of came home. I was actually on tour with The Damned when I got the call, and I was like, so another band that I'm just fortunate to get to play with because I love their records, and it's kind of like teenage dream gig. So yeah, I was flattered, and I was like, I better get to work. So. So luckily it worked out.
But this isn't just something where it's like your phone rings and it's Perry Farrell, right? It's like you've been running around in these circles for like 25 years, right? With a lot of these guys.
We did a tour with Jane's Addiction with Queens back in 2003. I think we did the Big Day Out together and Lollapalooza, and so we've known each other for a long time.
But I mean, in the last 25 years, I was looking through some of the artists you play with. You really play with some top-notch musicians. Yeah. And you've had a chance to play with them, work with them, tour with you. Really, it's pretty incredible the list of people you've had a chance to encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate because since like mid '90s, I've it all started with Failure. When I got the call to do that, that sort of opened up a bunch of doors.
And then you get to work with Maynard and Billy Howardell, and
I was just listening to. I think I was listening to Anima yesterday, which is really funny because we opened up a bunch of shows for Tool on that tour, and that's sort of where everything sort of kind of started. So.
And I was thinking too about some of the frontmen you've had to work with as well. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Maynard, and I mean just the list, John, Perry Farrell and stuff. So what's it like with some of those guys?
I mean, they're all people that I have so much respect for, and their craft is each one's different, and everybody has their kind of their special sort of superpower,
What's Perry's?
Perry's, he's like a shaman on stage. He's got this ability to kind of like just pull you into his thing, and like especially with Jane's, he plays his delay like an instrument. So his vocal is this thing, and then he has this delay, and he has control of it on stage, and it's just this swirling, enveloping thing where you just draw into it, So
yeah, his voice is literally another instrument on stage.
it is, and it's like normally you'd hear a voice like that, and you go like, it's so odd and so strange, and Jane's is such a great example of like 4 individuals that make this crazy, interesting sound. And so each part is, so key. So, and then you got Maynard, who's somebody who's just, the command that he has of his voice, and his you know, the intensity that he delivers is just, they're different parts of the same spectrum, I guess.
Yeah, and all these guys are super creative. Billy Howardell's latest solo albums, nothing like, Perfect Circle and different things like that.
Yeah, because I think, especially he's a great singer too, to be honest. I don't know if many people have gotten the chance to hear him sing, but yeah, so when he does his thing, I hear Billy, It's perfectly his aesthetic and his sound, and then when he combines his thing with Maynard, it becomes a perfect circle. So I guess over the years I've been fortunate to work with all these people because they all have their own sort of signature characteristic, and once you start making music with that, it's an interesting combination.
Well, let me ask you about this, and I don't know if this is even a question you can answer, but where does hired gun stop and band member begin?
It just depends, I think.
Is it an amount of time? Is it writing?
I think there's a kind of a hazing period, when you're a hired gun. And that's usually, lasts for a tour cycle. But yeah, it just depends on who you're talking about, But I've been fortunate to be invited to be band members of all these great bands. And, with Jane's, Dave is going to come back at some point. So I respect, what's going on with him, and he needs time to get back to where he feels comfortable. So I'm here to help. I'm here to make sure that the music is treated with respect, and I listened to his playing a lot, and I tried to get into his head, and I actually talked to him on the phone a couple times about certain things, how philosophically what the way he plays. And so I'm here temporarily for Jane's Addiction.
How long did you have to prepare for this one? Because I think I remember, what band was it that you only had like a week?
So with Queens, I had a week to learn about 40 songs, and it wasn't just guitar. It was guitar, keyboards, and lap steel. And that was a challenge.
Yeah, I bet. And how long did you have to get this ready to go? Or do you know about this?
Fortunately, I was able, like I said, with a lot of these bands, Failure, Queens, Jane's Addiction, The Damned, all bands that I have loved.
So you kind of.
So I kind of knew. I had a little bit of an idea of what I was getting into, but to actually get in and play it, it took me about a week before I stepped in the room with those guys.
One of the guys I know that you've worked with and crossed paths with is Trent Reznor. He's probably one of the only guys I've never met that you've actually worked with. What's he like?
He's another sort of intense dude who takes his art very seriously, and at least my experiences with him, I've toured with him as well, and he's very focused on what he does, and no one does it like him. But he's always been gracious enough to, put his stamp on some of the Queen's music, and I think there's, I believe there's a mutual respect there between both camps, and I mean, he's I think his soundtrack work is incredible. So, yeah, I mean, that's a guy that I put up on a high pedestal of somebody who delivers all the time.
Yeah, I never had a chance to meet him. Of course, I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan. I remember seeing them at Woodstock '94.
So did you get mud on you?
I didn't. We were talking about this earlier. I went and saw Guar last week. I didn't get blood on me, and I didn't get mud on me. No mud or blood? No mud or blood. I'm a mud and blood free kind of guy when I go to concerts.
I'm kind of like that.
But I see on stage, you gotta play your guitar, your axe between all those nice looking dancers.
Oh yeah. It's funny because that's a new phenomenon for me. I'm the kind of person who's like, when they're on stage, I'm in this kind of bubble, I guess, where I'm just concentrating on what I'm doing, and it's like I don't want to get too dark, but when people step on stage, they're kind of getting into a spot where it's dangerous. it could be dangerous for me, or it could be dangerous for them. And I prefer that it's more dangerous for them than me. So if anyone gets on stage, I'm usually ready to fight. So the first couple nights, I was like, what the fuck is that behind me? So it was an adjustment for me. It would have been a bad look if I would have, done something
They of course
violent.
They of course have to tell you what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that you're just not expecting because it's not normal for me.
Yeah, you've never probably done that before in your career.
Nope. So new things all the time happen. Yeah. I learn something new every day about myself.
Yeah, you weren't at Woodstock '94, were you?
I was not, no, but I saw the footage, and actually, I want to say Billy Howard. He might have been working for them at that time.
Wow, interesting.
And
Okay.
he was teching for someone in the band, and I heard stories about him.
Yeah, ironically enough, not to talk too much about my life, but I think I saw Nine Inch Nails and Soundgarden almost exactly 20 years later here in Detroit in 2014.
Oh yeah.
And it was fortunately I had the chance to see the last Soundgarden show. Were you a Soundgarden fan?
I was, yeah, I am, for sure. Yeah, I got the chance to see them around that same time.
Yeah.
I think Queens actually did a couple shows with them, which was fucking great. They always, sounded amazing.
So what's going on with Queens right now? What do you guys got going on?
There's stuff happening.
There is? Okay.
I can't really go into what's happening, but yeah, we'll see you sometime out there. Yeah, there are some shows that are confirmed for next year.
By the way, how'd the pandemic treat you?
Well, I mean, it was fine.
Were you able to be creative or do anything?
I was able to also, I became a father right before that.
Oh, congratulations!
And so
yeah,
it was very good for me in that sense, to where I got to be there, for the first 2.5 years, and so I got to bond with my boy, and so that was good. So that took up a lot of time. But yeah, I was able to finish a record with a band called Gone Is Gone.
Oh yeah.
With Troy Sanders from Macedon and Tony Hajar from At the Drive-In, and so that was kind of via remote, sort of like exchanging files. We all have our own studios at home, so we were able to kind of finish it that way, and we had to mix the record. My friend Norm Block mixed the record at his house, and technology has really come a long way. I mean, he was mixing as he's mixing, we can hear it in headphones at our houses through the internet, so we're able to kind of make notes.
Yeah, that's your pandemic record. Yeah, it seems
Pandemic
like every band
record.
has one.
Yeah, that was my pandemic record.
Yeah, were you writing stuff or getting ideas for New Queens?
So there's always stuff being kind of tossed around during, at all times with Queens, like there's songs on the last record that were 5 or 6 years old, so there's still songs that are kicking around with us that have been around for about 10 years. So, sometimes they take their own time to finish. You can't force them.
That's funny you mentioned that because you're just looking at these guitars and I asked you about your guitars. You say, well, it's got to kind of come to me. It's got to, I got to feel it.
Yeah, I'm more of a guy who doesn't I don't try to limit myself of I need this guitar to do this. I try to let instruments speak to me.
And just like the song, though, it's like you don't want to force it. You kind of just sometimes you just let it sit.
Yeah, it does. It's got its own sort of spirit, its own kind of, voodoo, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, because Queens has been around now close to 25 years now. It's 20, 25 years. And you talk about file sharing and doing different things now that back in the day, you guys had to get in a room together and jam.
Well, with Queens, we don't do the file sharing thing.
No.
It's all together, yeah. So
a little more organic like that.
Yeah, it's always that way. It just doesn't. I don't think we would even try to do it that way. It's just not. If we have to be in a room together. It's got to be that.
So what else do you have coming up here that you can talk about within the next year or so? I mean, you're just going to finish this Jane Smashing Pumpkins
I'm
run?
going to finish this run. I'm going to go home and hibernate and do some holiday stuff with the family.
With your son there, yeah.
My son and my wife, and just, kind of reset.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, as far as Queens, all I can say right now is there's some shows that are booked.
Okay. There's some shows that are booked for Queens for 2023.
2023.
Sounds weird to say, I should say.
I know.
But so we're here at this Echopark, so I want to talk a little bit about these guitars. So how did you get hooked up with the Echopark guys?
So Gabriel, when we finished our record, Queen's record, like clockwork, we started rehearsals to go on tour, and a friend of ours who's a guitar tech, his name is Ali Christie, he was saying, you guys should hook up with this guy, Gabriel. He's got these cool guitars. And he just showed up one day with like 6 guitars. And he was like...
And you probably hear this all the time, though, from people, right?
Yeah, but we got a chance to look at his stuff online, so we were like, it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
So he just brought them down, and all of a sudden we were just like, oh, I guess we're playing these. Because...
When you pick it up, do you just feel it? I mean, is it...
Well, the thing about guitars for me, and probably, everybody in the Queens, it's you have to, it has to feel right, and there's something about vintage guitars, and then there's something about new guitars. The difference is usually vintage guitars feel better because they've had some wear on them, and they've been sort of like had the kinks, worked out of them. But his guitars, I mean, there's a soul to each one of them because he puts his hands on all of them, and he makes them by hand and wires them by hand, and it's a process that he learned from one of the great Leo Fender. So
which you also have a signature model of too, right?
I do, yes. Which I did that deal before I met Gabriel.
Right. We'll just cut that out in post.
Yeah, it's fine.
So anyways,
No,
I'm just teasing. But yeah, no, but I mean, you've been around a long time. So
I've been around a long time, but also, it's nice to, have a signature model. That's something that, you dream of when you're a kid. But also, it's great to talk to somebody who's making guitars, because that way you can share ideas. And so, with him, it's like I always like, what if we, it would be cool if we did this shape with these pickups and this neck, and what do you think? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And then 3 months later, that guitar that you talked about is in your hands, and it's made by hand, and it's made with this intense like care, for the instrument. So it's not just like a custom guitar, it's a custom gift of like, I heard what your idea was, and I put my own idea into it as well, and it's this thing. So it's with him and me, it's always a collaboration.
And when you're on the road, are you like sketching out on bar napkins like in Spinal Tap, like that, take a picture and email it to him, or?
Yeah, I wish I had that experience with him. I do want a Stonehenge shaped guitar with exactly those dimensions. I mean it's more or less like it's kind of a shorthand language,
And how many of his guitars do you have right now?
I have 5.
And you'll be playing them tonight?
I will be playing one of them tonight, yes, unless something drastic happens,
right?
Which sometimes happens. I don't know. I can't predict all this,
Yeah. No, this is pretty cool. So we're down here in downtown Detroit, and they invited us down here to talk with Troy, and it's like it's just so cool to walk around and see all this wood, and like they were showing you like a model of a guitar, or they're gonna paint that and give that one's almost ready to go, right?
Well, that one so we've been talking about that idea for about a year, and obviously he's been setting up this shop, and that's been taking up a lot of energy, which I think it's important for, as somebody who has a workspace, I think you have to have your vibe, you have to have your thing together. Mm-hmm. And so we've been talking about this guitar for like a year, and finally I think it's going to get its chance to be finished. And so yeah, we were just talking about the color and, you know, maybe some pickup choices.
Talk about this. Talk about the wood.
Well,
Do you know much about it? Or
I do know about the sinker pine. Yeah. When he told me about this, I don't know how you measure wood, you know, but I guess this wood's sank to the bottom of the Muskegon River. That's this stuff called sinker pine that he calls, and I know that he's made a bunch of guitars with that. I'm actually really curious to have one of those guitars made for me as well, because anytime you have wood that's 130 years old that's been sitting at the bottom of a body of water and pulled up and dried out, it's got to have some soul and some,
I was just gonna say it's got to have some spirit, some soul. It has to.
some voodoo. We keep talking about voodoo because sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good. But you know, what's one of the things that I like about Gabriel's style is all of his instruments seem to have that sort of individuality. So the wood is a big part of it, and just looking through the volumes of slabs of wood in there, I could be here forever and make every guitar I can dream of, and there'd still be wood left over. So that's a big part of it for me too. His understanding of wood and the history of wood and what everything sounds like. I mean, he'll bang on pieces of wood to hear what tone they have, So
Just looking at the wood out here, it looks heavy, but when I picked up that guitar, I was like, wow, this thing is nice.
So I like heavier guitars, but not everyone likes that. But so that's another thing where it's like, well, you were asking me earlier about what I need in a guitar, and one of the only things that I really require is that it's got some weight to it. It's got some sort of like
Some girth.
It fights back,
Yeah. Some balls.
It has to have some struggle
Yeah.
with me. Mm-hmm. It can't be easy, like if the strings are too light, I'll break them or I'll just bend them with just playing a chord, because I like to hit stuff hard.
Who inspired you to pick up a guitar for the first time?
I mean, I think it would be Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listening to those records, I was like, well, this is blues, but it's produced in a way that's like, I liked his production style too, where he would have 3 parts that would fit into one part, so I always liked that about his playing. I always thought that he was smart, and he looked cool too.
Yeah, it's part of the thing when you're a kid growing
Yeah,
up, right?
yeah, he'll look cool.
Yeah, I mean, to be a rock star, you have to go through the rock and roll car wash, as I call it, to look like a rock star, right?
I never heard that.
Yeah, there you go. So did you ever have a chance to meet Jimmy?
I did.
Yeah. What's that like?
It was surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. He actually came to see Queen's play in London, and oh man, he came backstage before we played.
Oh,
it's like, great, thanks. But it was a wonderful conversation that we had, because I was in the middle of making this double neck guitar that Fender made for me in the custom shop, and I was playing this other 12-string guitar that they made for me, and he was like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm like, "Ooh, it's your fault that I'm playing this guitar." Because I knew the whole story of Stairway to Heaven. Everyone thought he played the double neck, but he played this Fender electric 12-string on those records. And I knew that, and I said, well, this is kind of a tip of the hat to you, so thank you. And then we took a photo, and then he watched the show, and he came back afterwards, and he was just sweet as pie. I loved him. Yeah.
That's a great story. Yeah, it's so fun when you get to meet your idols, and they're so great.
I gotta say that's I love that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can go wrong,
One of my friends, JD from the band Black Label Society, just met Gene Simmons, the guy who turned him on the bass as a kid. Just met him like this week for the first time, and it's kind of cool when you get to meet these people. And I'm lucky enough because I'm here in Detroit, and all you guys come through Detroit. I get to meet a lot of you guys, and so my friends and bands never get to meet their heroes.
Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
But I was lucky to meet Jimmy, yeah, for sure.
I remember asking my friend Bumblefoot one time, I'm like, when do you know that it's time for two necks on your guitar? You know Bumblefoot?
I don't know him, no.
Well, the top one doesn't have any frets.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's a fretless.
Yeah, the top one, yeah. Or the bottom one, whichever one it
When
is.
you
but-
need you need two necks on your guitar when you have to switch between 12 string and 6 in one song. When you record it that way, you're like, oh, great. So I have to do this now.
I think that when he was touring with Guns N' Roses, he decided I need two guitars and on two,
Yeah.
two necks, double neck.
Yeah. It happens. It happens to the best of us.
Well, Troy, it's been great talking to
Yeah,
you.
you
Great
too.
to meet you as well in this beautiful Echopark here. And have fun tonight at the show and for the rest of the tour. And good luck with everything, including your baby. That's awesome.
Thank
Congratulations.
you so much. Yeah. Cheers, man.